I got some likes here. Okay, so today I'm diving into this webinar that is such an important topic, talking about hormones. And in particular, right now we're in January 2025, and so it's winter. And there are changes that happen with our hormones in the winter season. And it's really important to know what to do about this, how to navigate it. So that's what we're covering today. So, just a little disclaimer, unless you're actually working with me as a patient, this is not creating a doctor-patient relationship. Use this information for health education purposes, and then talk to your healthcare provider about what's best for you. So, what we're going to explore today is how to love your hormones rather than be bothered by them, and how understanding how hormones naturally shift during the winter season, and how to adapt your lifestyle and hormones to better support your body. And I want to make sure that people understand that our hormones are our friends and not our foe. And there are, a lot of times hormones get blamed for so many different health issues. And of course, when our hormones are out of balance, they can create symptoms, they can create issues with our bodies, but we want them to work for us rather than against us. And that's what I'm going to help you with today. So I'm really passionate about women's health and hormones, and I've written a couple books. The first one was on skin. The second one, Natural Beauty Reset, focused really on women's hormones. And I am a naturopathic physician. I've been doing that for 25 years. I started seeing patients when I was 26 years old, and I remember really well how those first patients I saw, women in menopause going through that transition. And I was helping them with their hormones, with supplements, their diet, and bioidentical hormones. And they were, I'm sure, looking at me like, are you sure that you know what you're doing? You're 26 years old. How do you know what we're going through? And I can say now, 25 years later, and yes, I'm about to turn 52 next month. I'm going through all of it. I've experienced it all. I've experienced since that time, pregnancy, miscarriage, perimenopause, menopause, now transitioning into postmenopause. So I understand. And I've helped so many women along the years. And so I am very passionate about this for personal reasons, because of I understand it, I get it. Hormones are complex. And unfortunately, there's not enough information about hormones for us, and it is just an emerging thing. And so I think there's so many women seeking answers right now, and I get it. And I think it's really great that more and more women are wanting to talk about their hormones, talk about these hormonal changes, whether it's PCOS, PMS, PMDD, period problems, perimenopause, postpartum, menopause, postpartum, like all of the different things that we go through. It's good for us to talk about it because it's time. So I want to talk a bit about part of the reason we got a little bit behind the times is because women weren't included in research until recently. So it wasn't until 1986 that the National Institute for Health in the US established a policy encouraging researchers to include women in studies. But it actually didn't become law until 1993. And even with this law happening, there's a lot of research that's still done today where women are excluded from the studies. And so this is still an ongoing issue. And so prior to this time, though, there was this bias that really, women are pretty much the same as men. So they didn't need to be included in medical research. So they felt they could just create a lot of assumptions of women's health based upon men being in studies. But this has created a whole host of issues, especially around prescription medications, where dosages and side effects and all of these things were determined based upon men and women excluded from the studies. And so much of this has happened. Also, there was a study that you may have heard of called the Women's Health Initiative study that ended in 2002, And there was a lot of media coverage on this, and there were some big sweeping concerns about hormone replacement therapy. And what we now know is that so many women were taken off hormone replacement therapy, and that actually has created some issues. More women with things like osteoporosis and fractures and cognitive decline and things that could have been prevented. So we're going to talk more about hormone replacement therapy in a little bit. But I also want to talk about another really important reason why this is important now is because 50% of the US female population is 40 years of age and older. And there are 55 million women in the US and approximately 1.1 billion women worldwide that are postmenopausal. The average woman can expect to spend 40% of her life in postmenopause. And so this is a significant time in our lives when a lot of hormonal issues happen. And so I think this is why a lot of women, a lot more people are talking about hormones. So there's talk about hormonal balance, and some people think, well, what is actual hormonal balance? I like to say hormonal harmony because you could think of it this way. You can think of hormones as musical instruments, and your body is this symphony, and each instrument needs to play its part perfectly. It has to be in the right volume, rhythm, pitch, melody, tone to create a balanced and beautiful sounding song. And that's what hormones are like. They work together. We have all these different hormones, and I'm going to talk about some of them today, but they need to work together. You can't just look at a hormone by itself because that's not how our bodies work. We have all these hormones working together in our bodies. And so, just to kind of paint a little picture of kind of an ideal picture of what hormonal harmony could look like when our hormones are working ideally how they were designed. And I know this is not necessarily realistic. Some of you may experience this, but most women don't. But this is kind of the picture. So when our hormones are balanced, we wake up feeling rested before our alarm goes off, thanks to a healthy elevation in cortisol. We don't need coffee or naps because we have plenty of energy through the day. Hello, balanced blood sugar, thanks to insulin. We don't need acne treatments or concealers because our androgen levels are balanced. At the end of the day, we start to feel sleepy because of a drop in cortisol. And when the lights go out, melatonin rises. We fall asleep without night sweats or hot flashes. Thank you, progesterone and estrogen. And we are free of migraines and moodiness before our periods as estrogen and progesterone are balanced. And our periods are Goldilocks just right, not too heavy, not too spotty, not absent. So when we snuggle up with our partner and we feel connected, we have a boost in oxytocin. We have great sex drive and ability to orgasm without being obsessed about it, thanks to balanced testosterone and plenty of vaginal lubrication thanks to adequate estrogen. So that is the perfect picture, and that's kind of what we strive for but I like to kind of create this image for you because I believe I'm a big fan in visualization and knowing what something is supposed to do. Because if we focus too much on what things aren't doing or how they're broken or how they're disrupted, then we don't understand what we're aiming for. So, but how do we get there? How do we get out of balance? Is that many of our everyday habits do lead to creating imbalances in our hormones. It can be from medications like birth control pills, it can be from exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, which I'll talk more about. And these are a group of chemicals that are in our air, water, food, personal care products, a lot of cleaning products and things that actually can bind to receptors in the body and mimic or change the way that the hormones actually can work in the bodies. So, for example, if we're exposed to an endocrine disrupting chemical that has estrogen mimicking effects, then like parabens or phthalates and plastics, what our body might think is that it has estrogen, it has more estrogen, when it actually has this endocrine disrupting chemical. And so our body will behave like it has more estrogen when actually that's not what the case is, but that's what our body thinks. So it behaves that way. So that can create symptoms, it can create issues, it can create feedback mechanisms that throw our body off. Also, how we eat can impact our hormones, how we sleep, stress, how much stress we have, and how well we manage it. And even the aging process changes our hormones. And then, of course, other things like pregnancies and, other, puberty, all kinds of things can change our hormones. So let's talk about some of the hormones. I want to cover DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone today, and I'm going to just start with DHEA because this is a really important hormone that sometimes doesn't get as much attention, but it actually starts to decline as early as our 30s. And so it's produced in the adrenal glands. It's neuroprotective, it's antioxidants, and has anti-inflammatory effects in the body. It plays a role in energy, memory, body fat, skin aging, and sex drive. It converts to estrogen and testosterone in the body. So after we go through menopause, um, this is going to be one of the ways that we make estrogen and progesterone is through our adrenal glands, and that is in part because of the DHEA conversion. And if our adrenal glands are taxed by producing too much cortisol from lots and lots of stress throughout our lives, then we may have a harder time making adequate DHEA. And as we age, with just even in our starting in our 30s, our DHEA levels naturally decline. So then we get to our 40s, and that's when progesterone starts to decline. Mostly, this is produced in the ovaries, and it plays an important role in fertility, appetite, fat storage, mood, and it provides protective effects for our skin, brains, bones, breasts, and uterus. And when it's balanced, progesterone helps us feel calm. But when it's too low, we can feel irritable and experience sleep trouble. So a lot of women experience that during, like PMS, and their progesterone levels might be dropping. Um, and so progesterone helps also counterbalance estrogen. So this is helpful with a healthy menstrual cycle, but when our progesterone levels are low, we might experience irregular, heavy bleeding, hot flashes, night sweats. So that's for those of you who may be entering perimenopause, you might start to be experiencing some of these, and a lot of that could be due to a drop in progesterone. Estrogen gives us curves and fertility. It helps protect our brain, bone, skin, and heart. And we make estrogen our ovaries, adrenals, fat cells, and other tissues. So when we go through menopause and our ovaries stop producing estrogen and progesterone, our adrenals can kind of take over, as well as fat cells and other tissues. So, but it's never quite the same amount as our ovaries, but we still make some. Estrogen levels decline as we age, but especially in our 50s. So it can start to decline earlier than that, especially if you've if you pregnant right after pregnancy, you can have a dip in an estrogen. Of course, if you've had surgical menopause, then it could be earlier. I mean, surgical menopause, such as a hysterectomy, you could go through menopause early and have that drop in estrogen. So low estrogen can make the skin drier, less elastic, more fragile. And then it can also, it will trigger bone loss, hot flashes, insomnia, mood changes, night sweats, infertility. So women that are trying to get pregnant a little bit later in life, this could be part of the problem, but also with progesterone too. Vaginal dryness, urinary tract infections, yeast infections. So estrogen helps with keeping all of that healthy and active, but as it declines, we might start to experience some of these symptoms. Testosterone in women, it's made in our ovaries and adrenal glands, and it helps protect our bones and our brains, and it stimulates sebum producing glands. So an overproduction can lead to acne, but an underproduction can create dry skin, premature aging, signs of aging. And the active metabolite, or the active component, DHT, is really the main culprit for a lot of the androgenic effects that women experience, like unwanted facial hair, hair loss on the scalp, as well as acne. So it's really DHT, which is this active form of testosterone. And it's also a big issue for men who have thinning hair and that sort of thing too. So symptoms of low testosterone include low sex drive, brain fog, mood changes, fatigue, thinning and dry skin, muscle loss, and reduction in bone density and increased risk for fractures. So you can see that there's an overlap on a lot of the symptoms. And I wanted to kind of talk about these hormones separately so you can see that it's not just the and not just estrogen that's important or just progesterone, but these all work together. They all have an important role to play. In addition to the hormones that I just talked about, the sex hormones and DHEA, there's also other hormones like cortisol, which is a stress hormone. There's sleep hormones like melatonin. There's metabolic hormones, things like thyroid hormones. There are neurotransmitters. All these chemical messengers, they speak to each other. And so it's interconnected and complex. I don't have time to go into all of these this evening, but I do want you to know that there are many other hormones, but these I just wanted to highlight a few of the ones that give us a lot of the symptoms. And so we talk about there's a lot of talk about menopause these days, and every woman is going to go through menopause. It is going to happen. Now, she can be on hormone replacement therapy and kind of keep a lot of those symptoms from coming, or maybe even keep her period for, coming for many years. But menopause is inevitable. It's going to happen. And the average age is 51, 52. I'm just the perfect role model for that. Like, I'm turning 52 and I'm right in the middle of this. Technically, menopause is when it's been 1 year since you've had a period. A lot of people right now are talking about menopause, or as in England, UK, they say the menopause. I love the menopause, the perimenopause. And so, but really, it's really just that name is for it's been a year since you've had a period. So when we're talking about the symptoms leading up to that, that's perimenopause. So it can last anywhere from a couple of years to like 8 years. It really depends, and it's so unique from one woman to another. It's actually why I started seeing patients again, because I realized that it's so individual that while I can write a lot of things in my books and webinars and things like that, there's part of it that one-on-one just can't replace. So now, in this picture, it talks about premenopause, which I don't know if is the best name for it, but basically, it's that time before perimenopause. So there's this gray area. There's no real like, this is when it happens. But of course, it's always nice to have a diagram that shows us something that's clear like this. Typically, perimenopausal symptoms can start for women in their mid 30s, but most of the time I see women experiencing them mostly in their 40s. And it can start right at 40, women start having this. And then after women go through menopause and they no longer having a period, that means their ovaries are no longer producing estrogen and progesterone. That time after that is postmenopause. And I did have some people ask me, some women ask me, are you going to talk about postmenopause tonight too? So just want to make sure we are talking about that. And then I know some women who reached out to me had questions about surgical menopause, and they had a hysterectomy. And so it's going to be different for them because it wasn't a natural transition. It came on through surgery. So, what are some of the symptoms? And if you're experiencing them, you probably know. But before menopause, let's talk about before even perimenopause. This gets a little confusing because some of these symptoms can also look like perimenopausal symptoms. But I'm going to just say these are symptoms that are quite common in women even before perimenopause. So this could be women as soon as they get their periods, they could start having period problems, heavy, irregular, or painful periods. They got breast tenderness, PMS or PMD, which is a more severe form of PMS, skin changes, reduced sex drive, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, memory lapses, infertility. These are all quite common. And that is because of these hormonal shifts. Just because these are common doesn't mean that you should put up with them. There are solutions for all of these symptoms, and working with a good healthcare provider can help support you. And if you do have them, it's okay too. So know that there's help and know that you're not alone. So, perimenopause, a lot of women so confused by this right now because and there's a good reason because there's so many different symptoms. So irregular periods, mood changes, changes in your energy level, feeling dizzy, hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain, weight changes, brain fog, cognitive changes, vaginal dryness, infections, decreased sex drive, thinning hair, dry skinning, thinning skin, joint pain and headaches. That's one that sometimes people don't know about. Breast tenderness, digestive issues. And also, this is another one that I think a lot of people don't know about. But if you have existing conditions like migraines, allergies, autoimmune disorders, or things like symptoms like tinnitus, like I have, it can actually get worse. So this can be a time of having and there are other symptoms associated with perimenopause, but these are the most common. So when it comes to figuring out what is happening, is it my hormones or is something else going on? Because some of those symptoms could be joint pain, headaches, for example, digestive issues, worsening migraines and allergies, autoimmune disease. That doesn't necessarily sound like it could be hormonal. I mean, somebody could have weight gain or they could have brain fog and it could not be hormonal. So, how do you know? That's why I think testing is really helpful. And I know that some doctors don't like to do testing when women are in perimenopause or in menopause because or postmenopause because they feel like there's no point in testing because your levels are going to be low or they're going to be erratic. Well, I like to do testing because I want to know, well, is it something else that's causing the symptoms? I don't want to just assume because you're in your 40s and you're having these symptoms that it's because of your hormones. It could be due to something else. And it could be something, not even your sex hormones. It could be your thyroid, could be your adrenal glands. It could be something completely different. So I like to do testing to determine, is it your hormones or is it something else? And there are a lot of different tests out there, and I don't have time to go into all of those today. But know that there are blood tests, which are common for conventional doctors to order. And I often order blood work as well. There's a lot of great things that can be tested with blood work. For example, thyroid testing. Thyroid's great, especially if you run a full thyroid panel with it include things like TSH, free T3, free T4. Also, looking at markers for cardiovascular risk or other things. Looking at your blood sugar and your insulin. Those sorts of things are really important to look at in the blood. But there are also other tests that a lot of times conventional doctors don't run. And a lot of functional medicine or naturopathic doctors like myself like to order because it gives us a bit more information and things like urine tests and saliva tests. What I personally like about urine tests like the Dutch test, is for hormones, is that it gives not only the hormone levels, but it's giving it from the urine perspective, which means it's what your body is getting rid of, which means it's going to show your metabolites. How is your body breaking down the hormones? So it gives us a lot of great information. There's also saliva testing, which I find very helpful for cortisol for adrenal, and because you can also test throughout the day. And then that way you know what your body is doing because cortisol has this diurnal rhythm where it goes up in the morning to help you wake up, like I was explaining at the beginning, and then it drops down in the evening to help you go to sleep at night. But a lot of women don't experience that. They're staying awake up at night and they can't figure out why. Is it estrogen? Is it progesterone? Is it cortisol? Or is it melatonin? There's so many different things it could be. So testing can help us narrow that down. And then maybe you're tired in the morning, you can't wake up. Are you feeling groggy because you've got too much progesterone? Maybe your doctor put you on hormone replacement therapy of progesterone, you're feeling groggy in the morning because you took it at night and you're getting too much. Or do you not have enough cortisol getting you up in the morning? There's so many different things that could be causing symptoms. And then there are a lot of these tests, like the urine and saliva tests, are considered more specialty tests. And then conventional tests are usually more of the blood work. There's also, what is insurance going to cover versus what do you have to pay out of pocket for? And I understand that that can be a challenging thing, and certainly work with your healthcare provider what works for you. And so there's a lot you can do with blood work. So if that's what you need to do with insurance, then there's a lot you can do with that. But also, even with blood work, you want to look at optimal ranges rather than just the typical normal. Normal means that you are, you're in that sort of normal range, but a lot of those normal ranges are big, wide range. So those of us who are functional medicine, naturopathic doctors, we like more optimal ranges. We're looking for a more narrow optimal range. And a lot of times that could be sort of in the middle of the range, but not necessarily. But that's kind of generally, you don't want to see something right on the edge either way, too low or too high. And a lot of doctors won't tell you that it's just barely like 1 point above, outside of that. I mean, within the normal range, because it's not flagged abnormal. But you want to look at, like, if it's almost out of range, then we don't want it there either. We want it optimal because we want to be living life optimally, right? We want to be thriving, not just surviving. So, what are some of the lifestyle factors that impact our hormones? A lot, right? Sleep, exercise, diet, community, our support system, stress, and endocrine disrupting chemicals. These are all really important. So, I have a gift for you guys. If you go to my website, drtrevorcates.com, I have a workbook right now. It's the Natural Beauty Reset Winter Workbook. And so, this gives you things you could do for your hormones for food, movement, mindset, and skincare. And so, when you go to my website, you should see a little pop up asking if you want to opt in for that. That asks you for your email address, and we'll be given the workbook. And I'm going to share some of the things that are in the workbook tonight. But no, there's more in the workbook, and this is actually to complement my book, Natural Beauty Reset. So hopefully you'll get the book as well, which is available on Amazon, wherever books are sold. And Natural Beauty Reset, the book, is available in Kindle, paperback, and also an audio version. So enjoy consuming it however you like it. But let's talk about some of the changes that happen in winter. And so I wanted to spend some time talking about hormones overall, but there are some things that happen specifically in winter. So if you have a thyroid condition, this is something that you might want to consider. You might notice that your thyroid's a little bit harder to balance in the colder months. And so if that's the case, you could talk to your healthcare provider, get your thyroid levels tested. If you don't know if your thyroid is an issue, it's always nice to do a good screening test, especially if you have issues with metabolism, with temperature regulation, with your weight, with things like hair and skin. Those can be related to thyroid. So, thyroid can sometimes be higher in winter than summer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if you're trying to balance your thyroid, it can be a good thing to know. Cortisol, our stress hormone, is often also higher in the winter, which can lead to a lot of symptoms like inflammatory symptoms, skin issues, feeling overwhelmed, not being able to get to sleep at night. However, on the flip side of that, we've got shorter days. So that usually means our melatonin levels are better in the winter compared to summer, because melatonin is triggered by the light going out, by the sun setting. And the problem is it's also impacted by artificial light. So that's why we want to try and dim the lights before we go to bed at night to kind of help signal melatonin. And then making sure you're sleeping in a completely dark room to help with melatonin. The only problem with melatonin levels being higher in winter than compared to summer is that we can sometimes feel a bit groggy or sleepy because of that, because of those darker days, especially if you live in places where there's really long nighttime right now. And so, to accommodate for these shifts, work on stress management. Create a consistent sleep routine. Going to bed at the same time every night is one of the best things that you can do. Creating a sleep ritual, and then talk to your doctor about lab testing if you want to go a step further. Vitamin D is another one that has a big change here, and I wanted to give it its own slide because vitamin D deficiency impacts 50% of the global population and across different ages, ethnicity. So vitamin D is a big deficiency, is a big issue. Even when I was practicing in Santa Barbara, California, where it's sunny a lot of times, even surfers that I had as patients, people that seem to be outdoors a lot, they would still have vitamin D deficiency. So but in the winter time, because we don't have that sunshine, it creates even more of even more deficiencies. And because we have the shorter days, we're outside in the sun less typically. So, because especially right now, it's particularly cold where I am in Park City, Utah. And because vitamin T helps with neurotransmitters, including serotonin, low vitamin D can impact your mood. And vitamin D also helps support our immune system, it helps protect against a lot of different chronic diseases. So it's good to get our levels up. It's easy to just get your 25 hydroxy vitamin D levels tested, talk to your doctor about that. Just make sure that they're on the mid to upper end of that normal range. If they're on the low end of the range or they're out into the low end, outside the normal range and low, then you definitely want to take a vitamin D3 supplement. There are some foods that are available in winter specifically. So, in my book, Natural Beauty Reset, I have a seasonal plan and I go through each of the different seasons. And because we're in the winter season right now, I'm sharing with you some of the things that are in that book in the winter section. But I go through all of the different seasons and I talk about food, movement, mindset, and skincare. So these are some of the foods that are in my book that I talk about that are rich in nutrients, that are helpful at balancing hormones, and that are more plentiful in the season during in the winter season. Now, winter is a tough time some places for things to grow. And then depending upon where you live, if you live somewhere like California or Arizona, it's going to be easier to find a more plentiful variety of different types of produce. But I still am a big fan of simulating the seasonal aspect. I believe that our bodies, because they're designed seasonally, we are designed as women to go through seasons in life. Like I've talked about these different transitions of hormones, of we go through puberty and have menarche where our periods start. Then we go through this time, maybe we get pregnant, then we go through postpartum, then we go through perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. We have all these different transitions. We also go through cycles through the month when we're still menstruating. And so we're cyclical, we're seasonal beings. And I really truly believe that if we shift our diet and our movement, our mindset, even our skincare for the seasons, even if we don't feel like where we live has distinct seasons, it gives our bodies this sense of change and cycles. And I think it's really important to helping restore hormonal harmony. And when you eat foods in season, they're going to be more nutrient dense because they're going to be fresher. They're going to be closer to the vine or the tree or the ground or wherever they're coming from. Winter, of course, is not as fresh of a season, but there still are foods that we can get organic, locally grown when possible. When we look at food in general for hormonal balance, some of the things to think about are to get plenty of fiber. So, a lot of these foods that I have on this list, especially the grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, they're high in fiber. So, we want to make sure we're getting plenty of those. That helps with balancing blood sugar, helps with our digestion, our gut microbiome, which also helps our hormones, and also getting plenty of protein and healthy fats. We need protein, we need amino acids to help with making hormones, and we also need healthy fats for hormones. So, all of those can be beneficial. So, winter could be challenging time depending upon where you live. And if you live in a place like this picture that looks like where I live in Park City, cold weather can be kind of harsh and it can feel like you don't really want to move a lot. But it is good to bundle up, get outdoors, move your body, getting in nature. As I talk about in my book, getting in nature, there's so many different health benefits, including helping support our cortisol, which tends to get lower in the wintertime. So, getting in nature, moving your body, all of those things help with cortisol. You might want to do some gentle movement on some days, like some gentle yoga. You might want to do some exercise indoors and creating your maybe even in your home you could create a nice little fitness space, and you could do a lot with just using your body weight with doing lunges and things like that. And I have some examples in the book. And then mindset practices. Winter is really a season to restore, to rest and restore. And it's a great time for mindset practices like forgiveness exercises, gratitude journaling, and deeper, longer meditations. You may feel a little bit sluggish this time of year, partly due to the melatonin and the serotonin levels as well, cortisol, all of these things changing. That can make you feel a little sluggish. But if you're going to take a nap, just make sure that you don't take more than like a 20-minute nap, and so that you're able to stay in that nice circadian rhythm and getting to sleep at night, and that nice that sleep cycle. You might want to again create a nice bedtime ritual, play some soothing music. Maybe you want to read before bed. Maybe you want to have a nice warm bath with some like lavender essential oils or Epsom salts. Those things can help you settle into sleep. And then there's skincare. In my book, I talk about winter skincare and the importance of hydration and nourishment. And so do have some DIY skincare recipes in the book, as well as food recipes in the book. So specific to the winter season. So some of the things I have in there are the winter body scrub, but you could, buy a natural body scrub. You can make your own, whatever you want to do. But exfoliation is a really great thing to do this time of year. Tends to be dry, but you also want to hydrate. You also want to then use a nice body oil or body moisturizer that's free of fragrance and other. So fragrance is full of those endocrine disrupting chemicals. So trying to choose something natural. And I did create a skincare line called the Spa Doctor. I sold that company. I'm still involved in the product development, still recommend the products. You also do like a nice soothing lip balm. I think I could probably use one right now. So now I want to transition and talk more about hormone balance, and then I want to open up to questions because I'm realizing as I'm looking at the PowerPoint presentation, I can't see your comments. So I'm going to finish through this and then I'm going to answer questions. So hormone balance really does require a comprehensive approach. I'm going to pause here because I know a lot of people are looking for a quick fix. Like, okay, I've got this hormonal issue. Should I take hormone replacement therapy, or should I take this herb, or should I take this medication? Should I get on birth control pills? Well, really, to balance hormones, we want to look at all of these things. So we want to look at balancing blood sugar, want a good night's sleep. We want nutrient dense foods. We want nutrients. Having community, having support actually helps with cortisol, it helps with oxytocin, it helps with a lot of different hormones that help us feel at peace in the world, helps us with serotonin and neurotransmitters. Having an optimal weight, not being too low, too high, finding that sweet spot, whatever that is for you, but having that for you can make a difference in your hormones. Movement, exercise, having a healthy gut, having the gut microbiome in turn then impacts our hormones. There's lots of research on this. I'm not making any of these things up. And there's research in my book if you want to find any of this. So, stress management, another important piece. There are supplements that can help. I know a lot of times, again, like see these women going into perimenopause or postmenopause, they want to just get on hormone replacement therapy. And that could be helpful, but there are also a lot of supplements. And so I want to talk about some of that. Now, please understand supplements and hormone replacement therapy is very individual and it depends upon your symptoms, your goals, and your lab results. So, supplements, really, I'm just going to emphasize this again. I'm putting some herbs and nutrients up here. These are some of the ones I talk about in the last chapter of my book and Natural Beauty Reset. So, you can find out more about these herbs and nutrients there, but it really depends on what your symptoms are and your root causes. So, but there are some really great herbs like chaste tree berry that can help support progesterone, adaptogenic herbs that can help us with our cortisol. Black cohosh sometimes helps women with hot flashes. Dim can help women with estrogen metabolism, especially when there's that estrogen dominance when women are going through perimenopause. After women goes through menopause, she doesn't need DIM. She doesn't need estrogen metabolism unless she's on a lot of estrogen replacement therapy. Phytoestrogens are plant-based. They come from things like soy and flax, and these can help support women that have low estrogens. So nutrients, there's so many nutrients that are needed for our hormones like B vitamins, vitamin D, iron for women who are menstruating, especially if they're having heavy periods, are really important. But once women go through menopause, they may not need iron anymore. Vitamin C, magnesium, essential fatty acids, and finding the balance of omegas and getting the right amount of omega 3s and maybe things like evening primrose oil, zinc, and amino acids. All of these things and many more herbs and nutrients help with hormones. And then there's hormone replacement therapy. This is typically for women in perimenopause and postmenopause, or women going through menopause, whether that's surgical or natural. Sometimes hormone replacement therapy can be used for women prior to these times, but not as often. I'll give you one example. So, if after a woman gives birth to a baby, her estrogen levels can drop. She may have vaginal dryness. She may have tears or things like that from the birth, and because of being after pregnancy, postpartum, her estrogen levels drop. So it might be helpful for her to have a little bit of estriol. It's a type of estrogen vaginal cream to help with healing the tissues. It's not a lot. I wouldn't recommend pellets or anything like that, of course, but there are times before perimenopause that women might want to do some form of this. So they come in many different forms, pellets, injections, oral, transdermal patches, topical creams. They can be topical on the skin. They can be vaginal applications. My go-to is typically topical creams, transdermal patches, and oral in certain forms like in progesterone. But with estrogen, I typically will do patches or creams, and I typically stay away from pellets and injections, mainly because what I feel like is it with women in particular, it gives us this surge of hormones that we can't regulate as well. And usually the women that come to see me are more sensitive. They're the ones that a lot of them react to different medications. They're sensitive. And so I want to start small and I have more control over that with using topicals. And then there's bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, or BHRT. These are bioidentical hormones are molecularly the same as our own hormones. So the reason why we like these is that our bodies may have an easier time discerning how to properly use and metabolize them. And the negative research that's came out, like in the Women's Health Initiative study, was not on bioidentical hormones. It was on synthetic hormones and also Premarin, which is from pregnant mare urine. And that's a different form of estrogen. It's not bioidentical. So, bioidentical hormones are going to be as estrogens, things like there are three main types. There are others, but these are the three main ones: estradiol, estriol, and estrone. And they're usually prescribed as estradiol or Biest, which is estradiol and estriol. Most of the time, most doctors these days are doing estradiol because that's the most active form of estrogen and the one that provides a lot of the protection, helps a lot of the symptoms. And then progesterone is this is bioidentical. Progestin, IN, is not bioidentical. That is synthetic. So the IUDs, for example, that a lot of women have, there can have the non-hormonal kind or the kind with hormone. And unfortunately, the kind of progesterone that's in there is the synthetic progestin, not the natural progesterone. So I definitely have concerns about those. Certainly talk to your healthcare provider. This is your decision with your healthcare provider about any and all of these things. This is just my experience in the 25 years I've been doing this. So definitely talk with your healthcare provider. And then testosterone is a controlled substance. So you definitely have to work with a healthcare provider on that one. DHEA, it's also that it is what there's no other name for it that I know of. So there's no synthetic form of that. And what's right for you is so individual. This is between you and your healthcare provider. So, what's right for you? What symptoms do you have? Are you having any symptoms? Maybe you're not having any symptoms. I know plenty of women who go through perimenopause and go through menopause and actually don't have symptoms. But you also want to think about disease prevention. Osteoporosis, dementia, cardiovascular disease, the risk for us as women significantly increases when it comes to things like cardiovascular disease. We surpass men when we go through menopause because of the drop in estrogen and progesterone. And so we definitely want to look at these things. It's not just about symptom management, but also long term. We don't want to have osteoporosis, dementia, cardiovascular disease. And if we are starting to have some of those things, then we want to make sure that our hormones are supported to help protect us from further decline. Also, what are your risks? Or do you have things like breast cancer as a risk factor in your family, or have you had breast cancer? Then you want to talk to your healthcare provider. Is hormone replacement therapy right for me? Typically now what is considered safe is once a woman has, if she's had breast cancer, it's not that she can't do any hormone replacement therapy, but she needs to at least be 5 years free, clear of cancer. But again, talk to your healthcare provider. It's such an individual choice. Also depends on your lifestyle. How healthy of a lifestyle are you living? What are your life goals? Maybe you don't want to live a really long time. I know some people who want to live in the moment. They don't care about the future. Certainly, those aren't my patients. And then, do you have access to a healthcare provider that can help you with things like bioidentical hormones and supplements and lifestyle? So that's what why you have to figure out what's right for you. So, I want to tell you all about a couple of things before I open it up to questions. I do have an online event, and this is a free event. I am not selling anything with this, except I would recommend people to have a copy of my book if they do this program. Um, some of you may already have it. You don't have to buy another copy, but if you buy another copy and give it to a friend, that's even better. If you want to participate with me, this is an online 6-week hormonal harmony and inner healing. This is not like anything I've ever done before. And I'm in the very beginning stages of the concept for my next book. And so, what I'm looking for is a group of women to join me in the 6-week journey and to give me some feedback. So, the only thing I ask you is not to pay for the program, but is for you to have a copy of my book, Natural Beauty Reset, to do a couple of surveys, and to do some daily practices, like some daily journaling. It only takes about 5 minutes a day. It can take longer if you want it, if you want to do it longer. And then to show up for a Zoom call once a week and or watch the recording. And so that's pretty much it. And that starts February 25th. There's a link here, and I'll also put it in the chat to RSVP for this. And if you're on my email list, I'll send out an email about this. I am going to limit it to a small group of women because I want to make sure that it's the right group. So I actually am going to have people take a survey. But RSVP if you think you can commit to this and you're interested. And we're going to dig deep on this. It's not just about physical, it's about emotional. Because what I have found going through perimenopause myself and just being a hormonal woman, like all of us, is that life can get hard at times and our emotions um, can sometimes get the best of us. But there are things that we can do to help us through those times. And so I've created some practices, some daily practices, and things to really help you connect with your essence, your true nature, to set your health goals, but also help not only achieve the health goals, but also improve relationships. And that includes a relationship with yourself and your emotional well-being. So, and then if you don't have a healthcare provider, you're looking for someone, I am taking a few more patients right now. And you can scan this code to book a call with me or go to my website, drtrevorcates.com, and you can find more information there. So now I'm going to open up to some questions. Right. If anyone has any questions, I am happy to answer those. You can just put them in the chat. And if nobody has any questions, then I will, I'll just, oh, wait, I want to stop sharing. I can end the recording, but if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And then, oh, I did have a few questions now that I remember from the, RSVP. Some of you guys RSVP'd and put some questions in here. So let me pull those up to make sure I answered everything and give you guys a few minutes to think about if you have any questions. Okay. So I did get some questions. If I'm going to record this, it's going to be on YouTube so people can go back and watch it if you have missed part of it, or somebody else who wanted to watch it who missed out. There were some questions about having a hysterectomy and let's see, I feel like my hormones have quite a few problems. And so I don't think there's a specific question here, but that she said she's 61. And so I would just make sure you're talking to your healthcare provider about hormones and potentially looking at, what kind of hormone replacement therapy. If you're not on that already, I would talk to your healthcare provider about it. Even if you haven't started, it's not too late. If you're 61, it's not too late. You can still get on them. The sooner the better as far as protective benefits. And also it depends on if you have had your ovaries removed or not. For other people who have had a hysterectomy, that can also make a difference. So, and let's see, there was a question about, I don't drink alcohol. I take vitamins and powders and still feel menopause symptoms. So I'm thinking it's time for some extra help replacing hormones that are missing. And that there was a question mark at the end of that. So yes, I think that could be true. You might benefit from some bioidentical hormones. But remember, there are all the other things that I talked about. There's this holistic approach, there's supplements, there's your other lifestyle stuff. Giving up alcohol and caffeine is really, really great. And because those do put some burden on your liver. Alcohol, definitely more than caffeine. I stopped drinking alcohol 3.5 years ago, and I really found it to be helpful with hot flashes and night sweats and navigating perimenopause. And I'm never going to have another drink because I'm much happier and healthier without it. And then vitamins, I don't know what the powders are that you're taking, but having someone really look through that with you and making sure that you're optimizing that could be really good. And then I did also get a question about someone asked about what your blood estradiol level should be for osteoporosis prevention. And I typically look for it to be between 60 to 100. Somewhere in there is more for osteoporosis protection when you're postmenopausal. in particular. And it looks like we don't have any other questions that I can see. I'm just going to put the link here to join me if you want to sign up for the 6-week program and join me for this intensive and give me feedback and see if there's some good substance here for my next book. So thanks so much for joining me, everyone, and I'll see you next time.